on your thoughts as now you've had a chance to go further through this indictment?
Well, it's just not strong enough or specific enough to satisfy the very high standard that's required when a president of the United States allows his Justice Department to indict his opponent and influence the outcome of the election. That is such a serious matter that it can't be based on vague conspiratorial notions, proof of intent beyond a reasonable doubt. No, this is a charge that will result in a conviction in the District of Columbia, because just as a grand jury can indict a ham sandwich, a jury, a petty jury in the District of Columbia will certainly convict somebody named Donald Trump, as long as the evidence is plausible. But it doesn't satisfy the high standard that should be required when you're going after your political opponent. That's banana republic, when you go after your political opponent by indicting them and denying them vote for him or against them. I want to vote against Donald Trump, and I don't want the prosecutor to deny me that right.
What about the whole concept of special counsel? We had independent counsel, which of course Ken Starr was investigating former President Bill Clinton back in the 90s, and that statute sunset. And that was the independent counsel was selected by 3 judges of the U.S. Court of Appeals. But when that sunset, we then went to the special counsel, and that's appointed by the Attorney General of the United States, who of course is appointed by the President of the United States. Is there a place to go back to something like independent counsel so we at least escape the suggestion that the choice is a poisoned one, or do we even is the special counsel something that we should do more of, less of? What's your thought on it?
Well, it should be independent, and it should be picked by judges. It's going to be picked at all. Look, the ultimate answer is to have 2 departments: one, political Justice Department that advises the president, a member of the cabinet. Most countries have that. And then a director of public prosecution, which is a civil service job, not answerable to the president. If you have that division, you don't need special counsel or independent counsel. The reason we need independent counsel is because we have a schizophrenic Justice Department that half the day it's supposed to be the president's political advisors and help him get reelected, and the other half the day they're supposed to be independent and only indict people based on the merits. But we combine those 2 roles, which is why we need special counsel. But it's much better to have whatever that person is called appointed by 3 judges rather than appointed by the person who was appointed by the president, especially in cases where somebody is running against the incumbent president. The standard has to be so high for that, and it does not look like it's been met by this indictment. It certainly wasn't met by the indictment in New York, and questionable whether it was met by the indictment in Florida or will be met by the indictment in Fulton County. In my book, Get Trump, I went through all of these indictments and showed how politicized our system of justice has become, and today's indictment seems to demonstrate that.
All right, let me talk. I've talked about the selective prosecution, asking about why Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, wasn't indicted for what he did, and Trump was here. Let me go to the whole issue of selective prosecution as it relates to the classified documents down in Florida. Look, all the people who had classified documents who shouldn't have, whether it's Vice President Mike Pence, President Biden, who had them in 2 places, one in his garage that I suspect a lot of people have access to. It was like one was in a closet in downtown D.C., and I can tell you these closets, even if they're locked in these office buildings, you can pop them with a credit card. I mean, that was silly. And it seems to me that Trump's indictment was almost a self-inflicted wound, because they all have it in their heads. If they want to do something sinister, they've all got intel in their head that they could do. They don't need a bunch of papers on their desk. But it almost seems like Trump was a self-inflicted wound because he seemed to be rather obnoxious or uncooperative. But is he treated fairly?
No, he wasn't treated fairly. Now, we have to see whether the obstruction charge sticks. It's based apparently on triple hearsay. I've read the indictment. It doesn't say that Donald Trump himself told an eye or ear witness to erase videotapes. Apparently, there were no erased videotapes. All the videotapes were turned over. So that obstruction charge seems to be based on triple hearsay, but we'll wait and see how it uncovers and develops. The charge itself of classified material doesn't meet the standard of same justice for all, because it doesn't seem all that different from the allegations made against other people of the Democratic Party. So far, I've seen nothing that warrants prosecuting the man who is now in a 44-44 poll tie with the incumbent president and trying to influence the outcome of the election through prosecution. To do that, the standard has to be so high, like in the Nixon case. I don't think it was met here.
All right, let me ask you about the New York State case, which I haven't dug into in a little while. As I see it very generally, it's that he used his company, privately held, not public. He didn't have a bunch of shareholders, privately held, perhaps to pay hush money, and perhaps, it has to be proven, signed some documents saying where the money is going. Is that a fair prosecution or not?
No, it's the worst indictment I've seen in 60 years of practice. Never in the history of America, probably never in the history of the world, has somebody been indicted for paying hush money, the purpose of which is to keep people quiet, and then not publicly not acknowledging the payment of the hush money on a corporate form. It's unheard of. It's never been done. It's a made-up crime. It's the worst of the 4 indictments. There will be 4 indictments because there will probably be an indictment as well in Georgia. It's the worst. The strongest indictment is the obstruction indictment in Florida. If there's evidence to support it, it looks like maybe there isn't evidence to support it. But the self-inflicted wound of waiving a classified document saying, I could have declassified it when I was president, but I didn't. But again, that is not a serious enough crime to warrant interfering with an election. So,
well, I mean, and you've got to remember, I mean, and it's not to excuse any of these. I think they're all hoarders. I mean, every single one of these people are hoarders, and I know every single one of them who's been charged with the classified documents. But you take Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and I do not think she was ever going to do anything with the documents. I just don't believe it. I don't. But they ended up on Anthony Weiner's computer, he's got all these sort of sex crimes, or he pled to it, and he's the husband of our chief of staff or something. I mean, so it's like it couldn't be any sloppier. What are classified documents doing on our chief of staff's husband, who's got questionable problems? He got convicted, I think. Well, so like it's all sloppy. They're all. I mean, it's terrible. But is it a? I mean, they all have to be treated the same.
Worse than a crime. It was dumb, and it may have costed the election because Comey basically said what you've just said, that although it's not a crime, it was a serious.
Well, let's talk about Comey. Let's talk about Comey for a second. He's director of the FBI, and he leaks improperly records, and he doesn't even have the courage to put his name on it. He doesn't even have the courage to leak it himself. He launders it through a friend in New York so he doesn't get caught. If that isn't sneaky, what about him?
I agree with you. I used to like Comey. He used to come to teach at Harvard, and I used to like him very much. But the idea of laundering secret information through an NYU law professor, I just can't imagine a person of high integrity doing that.
I mean, the director of the FBI.
The standards of morality and ethics have gone so low in America today for so many people, equally on both sides of the political spectrum. And the excuse they all have is, well, they did it first. 2 wrongs make a right.
Oh, yeah.
The victim is all Americans who want to have a system of due process in place and equal application of the law. We're very far from that today.
Alan Dershowitz, thank you, sir.